So I want to ask you, tell me where the 401k is went wrong. Help us understand, like, because you know what, like I never really paid attention to the 401k until I started like hearing you talk about it, and I started to like look more, and I said, you know what, that's because if you really think about it, like someone works, 20, 30 years, and then they have like 60, 70,000. That's kind of a shame.
I'd say it's at least a shame. I mean, the average 60-year-old has about $60,000.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, what's that going to do for you? It's unfortunately, it's a big rigged system that's set up so that Wall Street wins. I mean, when did it go wrong? It went wrong back in 1974 when it started. The whole system was to take pressure off of the companies that had pension plans because they didn't want to have the liability of, paying people for life. So they said, well, let's do something else. Let's put the pressure on the people. And so the thing that's messed up, Stan, is that you've got people that work and do a great job at their jobs, and then all of a sudden one day they're supposed to magically be investors and have a 401k that they get from their employer, and they hope they actually keep it and don't lose it. And at best, they might have a few hundred thousand. I mean, most people have very, very little in it, and it's because it's a casino. The casino is rigged for the system to feed off of the people, and people aren't taught what to do with it. They just basically say, "Oh, I'm getting a matching thing from my employer, so this must be good." It's not. It's a scam. It's called no responsibility and abdication of your future. So it's really been a scam the whole time, and people need to wake up to it.
Yeah. So, like, let's say, for example, someone that maybe has about 50 to 70,000 in their 401k. What can they invest that in?
Well, the good news is right now in 2020, because of the CARES Act and because of this pandemic, people are actually able to take up to $100,000 out of their 401k, even if they're still working, and control it, investing in almost anything: real estate, gold, private companies, your own company, your
Yeah.
startup. Like, I know you hustle and you're out there and you've got your different businesses and things.
Yeah.
Man, if you have an idea and you're working for a company, and you need some startup capital, right now you can take up to 100,000, no taxes, no penalties, and put it into your hands to be able to control it. So really, the your imagination is the limiter. It's
Yeah.
almost anything you want can be done with that money.
So that's the CARES Act.
The CARES Act it changed the game, at least in 2020. The things that changed about it go away at the end of 2020, but it allows you to take up to $100,000 out of any retirement account and move it into another account, or spend it if you want to, no penalties. It also allows you to borrow up to $100,000 out of a 401k. And so right now people have access to a whole lot of money that was really probably dead until they left their job. Huge opportunity.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's pretty interesting. You said like invested in gold. Tell me about that, because I was reading something about that now's the time to maybe acquire some gold coins, or maybe some smaller gold bars. What is the deal with that? How does that, like, let's say for example I buy $10,000 in gold, right? So what happens to that, like in the next 5 years?
Well, what you're doing is you're transferring paper trash cash, which is what's being printed right now by the Federal Reserve. And it's being printed because we're out of control spending, trying to basically turn into a socialist regime. It's really crazy that the stuff that we're doing with the government and the Federal Reserve, Bernie Sanders could not have possibly dreamt this up in his best scenario. And yet we're doing it in 2020. And all this cash that's being printed out of thin air is making everything, it's going to make everything more expensive. Ultimately, it's making the dollars worth less and less. So the time to actually have something that maintains value is now. What does that better than anything else in the world in history? Physical gold and silver. So you want to turn your cash into something that's real. Turning it into gold and silver means it's totally going to be stable. You can't print physical gold and silver.
Yeah.
And it's really wonderful, because if you want to convert that into cash or real estate or a new truck, you can do that in a day or two. So it's a really powerful thing because it's a real asset. It's not funny money and it's not phony.
What are your thoughts on the Bitcoin thing going on? I know that from what I've read, like there's like a lot of behind the scenes stuff going on with Bitcoin, as far as like the foundation part of it. Like there's a lot of companies starting to get into the Bitcoin foundation part of it, almost kind of like when the internet started, but like a lot of people weren't really too in tune to that. What's your thoughts on the Bitcoin thing coming?
So the thing with Bitcoin is Bitcoin is the leader in the cryptocurrency space, in the space where for decentralized cryptocurrency, for decentralized electronic currency. you have every major government in the world working on projects, including the US and China, to centralize the currency into a digital format so that they can control not only the amount that's printed and created, but also what people are doing with it. So there's going to be a war that's going on between centralized and decentralized. Decentralized, like Bitcoin, that's freedom. The centralized stuff is tyranny. And bottom line, we are going into a digital currency where it's going to be some type of crypto. The only question is, do we have freedom around it, or is it big government monitoring everything? But
Yeah.
if you're not paying attention to it, or you just ignore it, one day you're going to wake up and you're going to get a notice, and it's going to say your cash is no longer valid, or you have a week to turn it in, and you're going to say, what's going on? The problem with not having some type of skin in the game right now is that you're absolutely going to get driven over by this train. So it's important, I think, for everybody to buy some Bitcoin and get in the game. And that could be $100. It doesn't have to be something big, but we tend to pay attention when we pay for something and we have real money into it. So I think everybody needs to pay attention because this is where we're heading.
Yeah. So like, if someone were to buy Bitcoin, would it be like the Bitcoin, or would it be like the Litecoin, or like the Zcash or Monero? What, would it be any of those, or like what would you?
I think the thing to remember is we've got the key central the leader, which is Bitcoin, and then you've got other ones that have different they have different roles. They're structured differently.
Yeah.
Z- Zcash, for example, has privacies around it that Bitcoin doesn't have, and so there are some useful tools. But ultimately, if you look at the market capitalization, like the value of all the Bitcoin is
Yeah.
far surpassing everything else. And so, do you want to do a bunch of different things? I mean, a few years ago, I jumped into all sorts of things, and almost all of those are less than they were 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And Bitcoin is still fairly strong. So I think it's important to investigate and put money into things if you want to understand them. So you want to understand Litecoin, put $100 into Litecoin, and
Mm.
you'll start to. It's kind of like if anybody's ever bought a stock, all of a sudden you're like, oh, what's Starbucks doing today? What's Google doing today? Because we pay attention to what we pay for.
Yeah. Or do you invest in like individual stocks, or do you do like index funds, or what's kind of your preference?
I don't invest in anything that I don't really control.
Mm.
And so when I look at the stock market, to me, it's a casino that I don't have control of, where people are raping and pillaging other people that have worked their whole lives. And I think it's a big scam.
Yeah.
So I'm not putting money in there for that particular reason. There's principles around it. I'm also not that good at it.
Yeah.
I'm not smart enough to be better than the AI technology that's trading at millions of times a second, which
Mm.
is what's happening. We've got massive computers that are trading, day trading. And so when people say save your money, invest for the long term, on what they're actually saying is invest for the long term so we can trade and pull fees out of your money for the rest of your life, because they're trading in milliseconds where they're telling you to stay in for decades. So I'm not good enough, and quite honestly, I don't trust it at all. And I don't think anybody else should either.
So I'm guessing your preference is still the real estate.
My preference is things that are able to be physically held that we can trust. I like real estate. I like dirt. I like physical gold and silver. I like businesses, like what you've done. You focused on businesses that you can impact. You can
Yeah.
actually do something about the profitability. I mean, you're trying to figure out how to make GE more profitable or Amazon. Like, you can't do anything, and you certainly can't
Mhm.
talk to anybody there. Like, it's not going to really work. So why would you want to invest your money in that? I see a lot of people that do well with their businesses, and then they decide, okay, like, I'm a doctor and now I'm going to go invest in high tech. I know nothing about high tech. But
Mm.
what I've told people over the years is, if you need to get juice, you need excitement, go take up skydiving, but don't find the excitement with your investing. Your investing should be boring. It should be calculated, methodical, something that's predictable. If it's something that you're getting a lot of excitement around, you're doing the wrong thing.
I see what you're saying, because now you're now you're basically making decisions off emotions and what kind of adrenaline, and so it's the wrong kind of decision making. That makes a lot of
That's
sense.
it. That's exactly right. When you think about making decisions from your gut, when you feel good, you know what gut stands for? Gave up thinking. It means you stopped thinking. It's just a feeling. Well, if you want a feeling, go get a beer, or go jump out of a plane, or go fast on a racetrack. Like, whatever you need for the feeling. But if you're doing it with investing, you and your money are going to soon be departed.
That's so true, because if you think about, like, if you want, like, for example, if you want to grow your business, like, it really takes a lot of work, and it really takes a lot of thinking, and it's not very fun because you're having to research and study and, like, try this and it doesn't work, and it feels like you never get rewarded for it. So I can see how that can be very attractive to someone, that they kind of see numbers, and I see what you're saying. So Are you still doing like some apartment stuff, or what's up with that?
So I am not doing apartment stuff. The stuff that
Okay.
I focus on is really the M's, the mini storage, the metals, things that I can actually control. I'm not, and I get it. Multifamily apartments, that is an M. It's just not the M that I'm choosing. And I think part of this is that we have to be focused. And if for anybody that thinks that they can do a little of this and a little of that, and it's going to end really well, you're just going to end up with a big chicken salad. It's not really going to be a focused thing that you end up with a lot of depth. It's just going to be very wide and very shallow. So for me, I narrowly focused on something I understand. We've got a huge housing, a demand glut. We have so much demand for housing. It's going to be a strong market going forward for all these apartments and things. It has everything to do with management, and it's great if you know what you're doing. I think there's a ton of opportunity there, a ton of opportunity in pencils too. And what I mean by that is,
Yeah.
doesn't really matter what you do. You just have to focus on something, and you focus, you'll become world class. You become world class. There's no competition.
Yeah, that's what you're saying. So focus on something that you can kind of master instead of like jumping back and forth with other projects. That
Yeah,
kind of,
we all want variety. I mean, it's one of the six human needs is variety, the spice of life, going to different places, traveling, doing different hobbies. But it's it's interesting because I've seen a lot of people that have all these hobbies, and I've had really one hobby for 20 years. That's been martial arts. I
yeah,
have four black belts. One of them is a fifth degree black belt. Does that happen because I tried a bunch of different things for an hour? No, it's because I spent 20,000 hours doing one thing, and really it was a series of probably 20 moves hundreds of thousands, if not millions and millions of times. And so, what's the thing that you're going to spend 20 years doing that you're going to spend, you're going to do millions of times? You
yeah,
do that with anything, you become world class, world renowned. And it's the unfortunate part is we chase feeds, we chase things that sparkle and sizzle, and we don't really get deep. Go deep, watch your life unfold in front of you. It's amazing.
ooh, I see what you're saying. So martial arts. Tell me more about that. Like are you still doing martial arts and all that good stuff?
Yeah, I mean, martial arts is one of those things that either sings to you or it makes you crazy, like you just don't want to do it, or you just like watching it on TV.
Yeah,
I think there's something that resonated with me when I started doing it about 20 years ago, and when I got involved with it, I knew it was going to be a part of my life forever. So it's every day. There's something called the walking aikido, where you basically are there's a way that you interact with other people, with yourself, with your environment, and when you train long enough, you start doing whatever the training is 24/7. It's always part of it's just how you operate. You rewire yourself. And I don't know that very many things work that way. If you do a sport, you're not really going to do football 24/7. Like when you're walking around, you're not going to be ramming into people or throwing a ball into it, into a restaurant. But with Aikido, my specialty, it's something that ends up becoming a part of you. And it's a blessing to have studied that. I would encourage anybody to go see if any of that fits, because if it fits, it can change your life.
ooh, I see what you're saying. You said like rewiring. So like how does the rewiring process work? Like for someone to rewire themselves? Because I was talking to Tim Story, and we kind of talked about that same subject. That's a pretty interesting subject. Like to be able to rewire your thinking or to change your habits. How do you go about doing that?
I mean, it comes down to a choice. There's a great book called the Greatest Power, and it's by a guy named J. Martin Coe. It's out of print, been out of print for a long time. And the greatest power that we all have is the power to choose. It's not just choosing though; it's choosing and then doing. So you choose something, you learn, you do, and most people end up doing something like they learn and that's it. They don't really ever choose something. They learn about this, they learn about that. If you want to rewire, you choose and you act. And ultimately that those actions start to rewire your DNA. It's like your experiences are how you become wealthy. Your experiences are what defines you, and ultimately they become part of your DNA. So a great example of this is people that lived through the Great Depression in the 30s and 40s, and two generations later, three generations later, people are asking themselves, why am I such a hoarder? Well, a lot of that trauma ends up embedding in DNA, in the cellular structure, and then people end up passing it on to their kids and grandkids. And so if you want to rewire, you have to start doing different things that are uncomfortable. You're basically breaking these bonds, these associations, and you rewire by putting energy into something, and you shake it up. You basically break apart all the things that are stuck.
Yeah, that's pretty strong because people don't like. I mean, people don't like to do that. So, like, okay, so would how would I identify, like, for example, myself, like how can I identify like the stuff that I want to change versus where I want to be? For example, like if I want to acquire those new DNA habits, where can I find those habits?
You find it in the work that you do. I mean, honestly, it's really more about the work, which I know is a four-letter word for most people. And people are like, "Well, wait, I want free money from the government. I want to watch Netflix." And when we find work that we actually care about, then we just start evolving. And eventually, what happens is you just don't recognize your former self. The biggest thing that we can do, and it's the hardest and easiest thing at the same time, that is figuring out who it is that are the people that are around us. And that's not that hard. The question is, are they serving what we want in our lives or are they not? Are we happy to become them? And when you look at the people that are around you, if they're going to have a certain level of wealth, they're going to have a certain level of health, they're going to have a certain level of integrity and authenticity. And you are literally the average of those people. And so, how do you change your DNA? First off, you figure out who to fire in your life, who to get rid of. And it's not just getting rid of people, it's opening up space for other people that are going to more serve your vision. So if you've got a bigger vision and you keep the same people, you're dead. It's never going to happen because they're going to pull you down. You're going to be fighting your whole life. So who do you need to be is largely impacted by who you're around. And people don't want to change that. They go, well, it's my mom, it's my friends. I've known them since I was 5 years old. And I'm like, eviscerate them, fire them. Sometimes you need to be fired. It's all a process of growing and expanding. And it's a choice. It comes down to the choice. But if you by default say, well, no, I've liked these people, I can't cut them loose, you're stuck. You're never going to change. It will be almost impossible for you to change.
Yeah, that's pretty strong, right? That's a challenge for a lot of people to
It's virtually impossible because it feels bad. You feel like you're cutting people out because, oh, well, I love them. And, they've been my boy for 20 years. Like I can't cut them loose.
yeah,
Well, okay, you know what? If they're going to grow with you, I mean, we're only talking if you're we're talking to you because you want to grow, and
yeah,
if you don't want to grow, then it doesn't really matter. If you actually want something beyond your current life, if you actually think that you have more potential, if you actually think that there is a bigger future than the past, then you have to be willing to make some of those decisions, and otherwise, you're just going to be at war with yourself, and nobody wants to be at war with themselves.
yeah.
I mean, that's just a stupid place to be.
That's very strong. That's so true. I mean, I remember I've probably gone through that as well, where I was trying to move up and try to find information, and it's a struggle because a lot of people give you they kind of resent you for wanting better. It's a fight. I think it's always a fight. Oh man,
It's a fight when people they're protecting their decisions. So think about it this way: when somebody is trying to get you to stay put and not go reach out, what happens if you actually do go reach out and you're successful? Then it makes what their decisions were wrong. It makes them look stupid in their mind because they made a different decision and they were trying to, they were defending what they already did.
yeah,
Because as soon as you make them wrong, there's all sorts of judgment on themselves, and they go, "Dang, people want to be right. We want to have our decisions confirmed. We don't want to have them thrown back in our face." And a lot of people have made decisions where they were basically just lazy. They didn't take the initiative and then they bitch and moan and whine and complain instead of saying, you know what? If it's going to be, it's up to me. I don't know who said that, but that is right on.
Oh, man. What do you think about like the like now, like with everything going on with all the unemployment and people getting checks, and like how is that going to affect the economy?
I mean, we're going into a place where I mean, this is what socialism looks like when it unfolds. And there's a great book called The Rise of Robots, and it talks about basic universal income. Andrew Yang, the presidential candidate that was running for president, talked about this, giving everybody $1,000 a month. And it's hard because we have a lot of technology that's taking over. The problem is like right now, you see a lot of people, and this is just a fact. People are making more money in many cases, not the edge, but like
Yeah,
mainstream. They're making more money from state and federal unemployment than they did when they were working full time. And maybe they're making a little less. Maybe somebody's making 26, 2,800, $3,000 a month, not doing anything, and they were making 4,500. Well, or sorry, 3,500, 4,000. So you're basically saying, yes, you need to go back to work for 500 or $1,000 a month. And people are saying, why would I want to do that? And so we're incentivizing people to be lazy, and that breaks our society. We need to stop doing this. There's a certain survival, a safety net, and I believe in that, taking care of each other, looking out for each other on a localized level. But this idea that we're going to send out checks to everybody, and then this idiot Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, wants to send out an unemployment check to people for the rest of the year. This is great. Let's buy people's support. Let's pander to them, make them think that they need us. It's a great way to go into tyranny. That is where we are heading.
Is it turning into like a political thing?
This is, I mean, this is all politics. This is about people consolidating power and making other people reliant on them. We should be saying, no, you know what? You need some scar tissue. Go out there and struggle. And it's most people that are taking the money and the resources don't need it. There are plenty of people that do need it. Most of the population that's getting money, they don't need this. What they need to do is get off their damn butts and go to work.
Yeah, I was reading an article. I think it was on Bloomberg that it said like a lot of people don't want to come back to work. Like the employers are calling, hey, we're open up, and they're like, well, I'm good. I'm gonna kind of hang out for a while. And that was
everybody's watching.
Yeah. I also read another article that that people are starting to save more money, and that actually going to hurt the economy. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the economy is set up as a consumption economy. I mean, our system is based on consumption and growth and money printing based on debt. This is what happened. This is why when we had 9/11, President Bush at the time said, be a patriotic American and go out there and spend money. It's because our system needs people to be consumers. And it's really fascinating when you think about the way the narrative with the media, when they talk about people, they talk about consumers, the American consumer. So what? We're just a bunch of buyers. We have no souls. We have no heart. How about the American people? How about, how about people? It's not this consumer. That's our identity. I mean, okay, yeah, if we're all on Amazon, which most of us are, and I have a clicking problem. I can't stop clicking. It's absurd, but it feels like Christmas. And I think that that's one of the strange things. We turn into these animals. Ooh, Christmas packages. And so every day of the year ends up being a holiday because we get these packages to open. So is that serving humanity? I mean, one of the wonderful things about this pandemic event is that people have started to ask different questions. They've asked, okay, well, what really matters? Like it's hard to find seeds anymore right now because everybody wants to be a farmer. Everybody's growing food. I mean, say everybody, like way more people than were doing this 6 months ago. So some of these things are really great. You can actually see things like dolphins in Venice because we're not totally destroying the planet. Like some of these things are really, really powerful. And yet we're saying people are hurting and we need to stop this. We need to have a vaccine. Hey, well, let's actually ask some other questions. Instead of just knee-jerk reacting, let's ask, what can we learn here that can benefit us long-term and maybe do some things differently? That's the gift in all this.
Yeah. You think there's going to be a lot of people wanting to ask those hard questions to themselves?
I think a lot of people have a lot of time on their hands right now, and we are asking different questions, and people are saying, okay, well, what really matters? I mean, I think a lot of people are actually connecting more with people than they had before this, and it doesn't mean that they're physically connecting. People started reaching out. I've had people randomly contact me, and I hadn't heard from in years, and it's really just fascinating. I think people are going, wait a second, what's the purpose? A rat race, or is it connection? And it doesn't matter if you're physically there or if you're on a Zoom call. It's caring enough to be present. The ultimate connection is presence. And I think that that's the gift that we can give each other. And we're seeing it a lot now. And it's a presence and a connection to this big blue thing that's floating around in the galaxy. Being connected to this. This is our home, and we need to be in like a synchronous harmony with it instead of just beating the crap out of it. I mean, this is not something you can just destroy. It's like having a relationship. You can't beat your partner and think your partner is going to be happy and stay there. You can't beat up the earth either and just think it's going to not do anything. Eventually there are consequences. And so we're seeing some of what happens when you stop beating and putting your foot on the neck of Mother Earth. It's a really fascinating thing. Mother Earth actually likes it.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of change over this last couple of months. Do you think that that people are gonna go out and shop like they used to? Reason why I'm saying it is we went to a couple of department stores this weekend, and it just didn't feel right. It just didn't feel the same. I mean, was kind of it almost felt kind of like dirty. Like they weren't. I don't know. Like I don't know. I just felt. I was like, man, I should have just ordered online.
That's where we're going. It's retail. It's going to. I mean, you think about the fear that's been built into how we look at each other and the world, especially looking at each other. I know there's an angst. I mean, I've felt it where I look at people and I'm going, oh, you don't have a mask on. You're too close to me. And there's like this weird tension that gets created. And the idea of going someplace where it's dirty, where and places are no longer they're just not taking cash. They're saying nope, it's Corona cash, and
Yeah.
so things are shifting. You're going to see massive retail and office just going away. Retail is just, I mean, it's more or less dead. It's going to work, but it's not going to be work like it did before. You can't afford to have all of the overhead, and quite frankly, most people aren't going to want to go do it. They're going to want to click a button. They're going to want to look at a video and see how things would fit them or whatever they're buying. And I mean, this is where Amazon becomes a multi-trillion-dollar company. Like it's just going to keep getting bigger. And so thinking about opportunities, how do you serve people in that space?
Yeah.
How do you serve people in this with this new paradigm? And that's where the opportunity is for all of us. Instead of sitting there thinking, well, wait, I better wait and see what happens.
Yeah.
Think about how you can serve people because things have changed.
That's so true. I think it made like a lot of big department stores really uh, take control of their online presence and their shipping forms. And I know the reason why I say this is because I was reading an article about Kohl's, and this whole pandemic made them really focus on their online, database and reached out to their customers, and they actually like kind of reinvented their whole website. Like they kind of took charge, and I was like, man, that's pretty interesting. I wonder, like, there's going to be a lot of big department stores that kind of take that approach because of they're seeing how much money they can save over the overhead. They're like, man, we can actually, start doing some online sales here. I don't know. It's pretty interesting.
Well, and it also goes to if you start thinking about this, where this heads, the question is less and less about the the physical location anymore. It's about the brand promise. It's about the culture. There's when you think about a lot of the brands, whether it's J.C. Penney or Nordstrom or Neiman or whatever these retail places are, they sell basically the same stuff. The
Yeah.
question is, who are they? Because that brand, the name of that brand, when you think about Nordstrom versus J.C. Penney, one of them you think about high quality, they care about their customers, you don't have to worry, and one of them you're like, they're definitely going bankrupt and it's a bunch of junk. I mean, and I say this, I was a child model for J.C. Penney, which is kind of funny. Maybe that says a lot. I don't know. But the point is that whatever we're doing, we have a brand promise as a company. Any company does, and as an individual, you have a brand identity. And so, who are you to other people? Whether you're an employee or an entrepreneur, it doesn't really matter. The question is, what is your promise when you show up to other people? Do people look at you and go, your word is true? You're going to deliver. You're going to show up. Or do they go, you're a flake, or you're just going to try to figure out how to get money out of my wallet? Like, how are you showing up? That is your brand promise. We all have a brand promise. And if you don't know what your brand promise is, you're a commodity, which means you're probably looking for your next check from the government.
How do you establish the brand promise?
So there's an alignment between what you say and what you do and your beliefs. That's called integrity. And so you start off by making sure that they're all the same. Whatever you believe, your actions are consistent with that and the words that you say about those things. And then it doesn't really matter whether you're selling pencils or you're selling your time as a plumber. It doesn't make any difference. It's just a question. It has to start with the integrity, how you treat people, and not just people that you want something from, but people. I mean, from anybody that somebody that's cleaning a park bench, or it doesn't make any difference. I think that it becomes the energy that you put out because of that integrity of how you treat other people and putting people before yourself.
Mm.
It's it evolves into a very easy flow. And if you don't have that set up, you're screwed. You have to start with that. And those that would say, well, I can do whatever I want. All right, fine. You know what? Try it your way. But
Yeah.
you'll eventually come around if you actually want to have a life that's by design, not by default, and doesn't suck.
What does that mean? Life by design, not default. Tell me more about that.
Means most of us are walking zombies. Most of us are just going through life on a merry-go-round. It's kind of like Groundhog Day every day, and it's the same thing over and over again. And we're not really thinking about the things that matter, like how do people see us? How do we show up? How do we show up when nobody's even looking? We don't ask those hard questions. We don't. Having a life by default is basically you wake up, you hit a clock, you go do something, you come back, you get a check, you eat something. You have this whole thing, and it's basically the same year over and over again. A life by design is very purposeful, and it usually has a whole lot to do with other people in terms of how you're going to serve other people versus you. Most people that are just doing themselves, it's really just how am I going to survive? How am I going to feed myself? And how am I going to feel good day to day? And that's,
Mm.
to me, we're not here for that. We're not here to be hedonists. And I can tell you this as a former hedonist, that was my focus. It's not why we're here.
Do you like, let's say someone's working, like someone is in, like, has a job, right? Can they, how do they develop a life of purpose without feeling they have to like open their own business? Because I think a lot of people think that because they work with someone, they feel like they can't really have a purpose. But how do they? How, is that possible still?
All we have to do is ask the question, how can I serve somebody?
Mm,
I mean, it really comes down to serving people, and it's fascinating when you start asking a different question about something beyond you, and you look outwards. There's a side effect, and it happens naturally when you're on purpose and you're thinking about the universe put us here, and it's feeding us, giving us energy, and giving us opportunity. Whether you want to call it God or the universe or whatever you're going to call it, there are rules, and one of the rules is being selfless and focusing on other people and serving other people. I mean, just if you think about the tax code right now, it's kind of a funny thing. So there's sort of a parallel. The tax code supports people that go and create housing. It supports people that go and create jobs. When Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump got into a pissing match in 2016, and she said he doesn't pay taxes, and he said that makes me smart. All he was doing was following the tax code. It was
yeah,
a series of incentives that
yeah,
helps people have housing because the government's terrible at this stuff.
yeah,
So what does that say? In this case, the government, their rules and their plan is actually in alignment with the universe. It's called serving other people. Serve other people. Stop asking what's in it for you. Ask
yeah.
what can you do for other people. Everything changes. It doesn't matter whether you're working for somebody else or you're an entrepreneur. I mean, there's a million things you can do. I mean, sometimes it starts off with just being kind to other people, actually looking at other people. Just like, next time you see somebody homeless, maybe just saying hi and
Yeah.
smiling at them versus ignoring them and pretending they don't exist. Like
Uh,
we can do something every single day and we absolutely ignore those opportunities and we stay stuck and we go, why am I stuck? It's because you're not interacting with people. You're not shining. You're not showing up the way that you could. Your potential is dead.
yeah. So I mean that makes a lot of sense because like it kind of goes back to like the what energy are you putting out, right? So how big are you on like the energy, like the people's energy, like tell me your philosophy, your thoughts about that. Like how do you can you project your energy? Like is that like goes back to like meditation or does it go back to like something deeper than that?
Ultimately, energy comes back to presence. It's how present are you with the truth? And most of us are moving too fast to even be present to what's real about us at any moment. The,
Yeah.
the question is, can you be still? Can you be still enough to actually observe yourself? And an old mentor of mine that wrote a book. His name's Frank Allen, and he
Yep.
talks about being the observer. And I highly recommend people study his work about being the observer because you'll start to understand how you show up, and then when you can see yourself and you can actually think about your thinking being
Mhm.
removed from yourself, everything changes. You can actually understand the energy. And sometimes it's embarrassing. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, my energy is terrible. It's so violent. It's so it's cancerous. It's toxic.
Yeah.
How are you going to know that unless you're still long enough to actually pay attention to it and to sense it? We have to be willing to practice stillness. I don't care what that looks like. It could be walking in the woods. It could be sitting still, meditating. It doesn't really make any difference how you do it, but stillness has got to become a part of our lives if we're actually going to have a life that doesn't just go by and we go, whoa, what happened? Like we have to be able to be present with it.
I was reading that like, and this really made a lot of sense when I started reading this. Like, I forgot what book it was. If I find it, I'll share it with you. It basically was saying like we all show up as a character, okay, and I guess that goes back to being present and being still and defining who you want to be and what you stand for and your morals, and show up as that person. And when you show up as that person, the people react on that character. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, we all do have. I mean, we are kind of an avatar where there's a representative that we send out. It's how we show up in the world, and we can choose what that looks like. Uh, we I mean, this goes back to the choice. I mean, ultimately, it is a choice how we show up, and when you look at people that have been through horrible things, whether it's Nelson Mandela or Viktor Frankl in the Holocaust, it doesn't really matter. Whatever it is, people that have been put in prison, whether they did something or not, we get to choose how we interact with that and how we own that. People often say, well, if you're going to take responsibility for your life, that's cool. Except when something happens to you, like how can you be responsible for a hurricane? How can you be responsible for being raped? Like how can you be responsible? And the answer is you're responsible for how you react to it. Doesn't mean that that you landed a hurricane on your head. Doesn't mean that you said, okay, come rape me. What it means is that you get to choose what you do with that. And so being ultimately responsible is the key to having total power over your life. If you don't have it, or you have limited amounts of responsibility, there is no chance for you to actually have a life on purpose or by design. You're absolutely going to be a victim. You're going to be blaming and justifying and basically shooting all over yourself the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's so true. Because I think that goes, that really goes, a lot of times that really goes uh, kind of like you don't realize it, I guess. What I was going to say is like your reaction to something, because your reaction really sets the tone for what's going to happen after your reaction. Man, that's so true. Man, so man, that was deep. Tell me about your podcast. The
So
Underdog.
financial underdogs is the podcast for all of us that feel like we're underdogs. I mean, most of us we're not born on third base, and so we're fighting. We're fighting up. We basically are David, and there's Goliath out there. There's the man. There's Wall Street. There's all this stuff, and we're trying to figure it all out. And we're trying to figure it all out because there is no game book. There's no plan that we're taught when we're kids. I mean, if you're born on third base, you probably have a plan, a battle plan or blueprint, something. And if you aren't, you're listening to financial underdogs because we just cut away all the BS. We go right for the jugular of the man. And we talk about reality, how you actually do this life by design, how you get clear on your numbers and your life and your trajectory and where the heck you are. I mean, Stan, one of the problems is most of us don't know where the heck we are. We go, I don't like it. Well, where are you? I don't know. Well, how do you know if you like it? Well, it just feels bad. So you're going to live based on your feelings with no actual intelligence. Financial underdogs is about getting clear on what the hell is going on in reality
Find
and then
out where you
taking
are.
that.
How do you find out where you are?
You ask better questions like, what does my actual credit card statement say? Let me tell you, what does your balance sheet say? What does your bank statement say? What does your calendar say? How many days have you been in jail? How many fifths of vodka have you consumed this month? Like what do the numbers say? The numbers do not lie. They tell a story. And a lot of us don't want to talk about that story. We sure as hell don't want to look at it.
That's
And
it.
so it's like, you've got your coach and you've got people that you're accountable to. The more you get real and raw with people, and it's not just, your buddy or your spouse, or it's really with somebody that you've said you're important enough to me that you're going to hold me accountable. And when you do that and you're real enough about what's true, everything can change. And it doesn't take 10 damn years. It can change in a heartbeat the moment that you're committed.
Yeah, man, that sounds true. Hey, I mean, it sounds like we can probably be on here for a couple of hours. Hey, and where can everybody follow you? Are you on Instagram? I was trying to find you on Instagram. You're more of a LinkedIn and Twitter guy, right?
Yeah, I mean that's one thing that's funny about social media. There's so many options, and quite frankly, one of the biggest mistakes I see people doing is trying to go over and do everything,
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
don't get any traction. And so some of these things I don't even understand what they do. I mean, I keep hearing about TikTok, and all I go, is that a grandfather clock? Like I don't know what's going on, but apparently people are dancing and it's working, and people get millions of followers. I have no idea. To me, it's not important that, like I have people that I recently listened to a friend of mine interviewing Grant Cardone, and one of the things Grant said a while back, and I used to laugh at him, and I was like, why do you say that? He said, my mission is to have 8 billion people know me. That's what he would say, just kind of like that. I'm 8 billion people. And I laughed. I go, why? Why do 8 billion people need to know you? And I don't have those aspirations. It doesn't mean I have little goals. It just means that there are people that want to be serious. They're serious people that want to be serious about their life, and they want a life by design. So they're willing to do the work. Those are the only people that I actually want to talk to. I don't want to talk to victims and blamers. Like it's a waste of their time and my time, because I'm just going to be frustrated and they're going to be pissed off because I'm so aggressive. So I kind of go wherever it seems like people are going to pay attention. And then so, yeah, mostly it's long drawn out answer to your question. Mostly it's LinkedIn, and then the podcast is where I reside most of the time.
I don't think you should. I think you're in the perfect spot, and the reason why I say that is because I've met a lot of people that they think by creating this attention on social media it's going to give them some credibility. But your credibility is from experience and from actually being at the bottom, being the underdog, building your way back up. So like, it's like, you know what, like I don't need that credibility because I've actually lived it. So
Big difference. I'm this there. We are. I think one of the things that is going to be a result of this pandemic. There are going to be people like Kim Kardashian that are a lot less famous because people don't give an F. They just look at her and they go, "You haven't done anything worth anything. Like you literally are famous for being famous." Like, okay, so somebody's got a big ass. I mean, ooh, that's really important. I don't think so. I think people are actually realizing that their friends and their family and their work they're doing and the food that they're eating, like these are actually important things. And what I mean by that is actually getting present to like, what are we actually putting in our faces? Like, why are people getting sick in America? It's because our immune systems are screwed up because the food's so bad. And it's because most people are either in food deserts or they're just addicted to all the chemicals and everything. So when we're having these other conversations, we're talking about things that are real and honest. We're not talking about or paying attention to people that are, again, famous for being famous. Nobody cares. And if that's what you actually care about, your life is terrible. You should look in the mirror and be embarrassed for yourself.
yeah, I think that that's so true because a lot of people now are trying to find answers and they're trying to figure out, okay, what's true, who's actually genuine, and now with internet and everything being so transparent, it's easy to trace back someone's roots. And you're well grounded like an oak tree. I think I consider you like an oak tree because your roots are so.
I appreciate that. Sometimes a little hard headed, and other times I sway. There is a very big difference between people that are academic. One of the things I heard somebody say recently was that an entrepreneur is somebody that's different than an academic. Academics like to argue and they don't really have any skin in the game. Entrepreneurs come up with an idea and they bet on that idea, and then they end up with a whole lot of experience.
Yeah.
Whereas academics always have perfect answers in a fictitious utopian world. And so I tend to like to be around people that aren't full of BS, that have actually gone out and done things. Whenever I hear somebody talk about how successful they've been, and then I say, well, tell me about the things that didn't work. And they're like, well, I never really lost money. I go, either you've not done anything or you're full of crap and you're lying. And so the problem is if there was actually a truth about that they've been perfect, they're setting themselves up because their ego thinks they're invincible. And that's what happened to me back in the 2000s. I literally thought I was invincible because I'd made so much money and everything was going good.
How much
So
did you lose? How much did you lose?
it was just a little bit, 20 million bucks.
Well, what kind of lifestyle were you living back then?
A pretty big one. I mean,
What?
it was a big shiny lifestyle, shiny cars and shiny houses and shiny. I mean, that it's something that I think a lot of people put on vision boards and they look at magazines and they follow these idiot celebrities that don't really have any purpose. They just have a lot of shiny objects. Unfortunately, people follow people. They look at a guy like Ty Lopez who has some great material, but it's he's flashing Lamborghinis and things. And okay, that's it's interesting. I think everybody should go out there and drive a Lamborghini. But if your entire life is focused on getting a Lamborghini and that's what you live and die for, you got problems. What you should invest in is a therapist
Yeah.
because that is not going to bring you happiness. You're going to have a moment of success. You're going to get really fast. You probably get arrested. You might crash. And then you're going to say, well, what was the point? I just spent 20 years getting to this point where I have this stupid car. And yes, you might fall in love with that car. But the point is, these lives that we've been told and pitched are really to serve somebody else. It's called marketing. It's about us being great consumers of other people's crap and making them rich and making us stuck.
Let me ask you this: like, uh, 20 million bucks. Were you very optimistic, like fearless, like let's do it, I'm all in? Versus your decision making now, are you more like risk factors and let me kind of are you more pessimistic? Because I was studying too, and I was like, man, you can actually be a little bit of pessimistic, but not in a negative way, but more about moving forward, more strategic, I guess, with moving forward. Are you kind of like that now? More
And
strategic.
I can tell you that any professional investor that has been around for decades is pessimistic on every deal until it proves itself otherwise. Every deal is a bad deal until otherwise you have information that proves it. And that's something that happens when you go as bald as I am and you get gray. You got the scar tissue, you've bled, and you start looking at everything totally differently. When you're in your 20s or 30s or you just haven't done anything yet that's actually caused pain, things look good. And it's important to remember that this isn't about being pessimistic for everything. It's about having the pessimistic thinking as a tool.
Yeah.
Optimistic thinking is important too. Great book, Thinking for a Change, really great book. And it talks about all these different thinkings. I actually did a program on this a few months ago and spent an evening with people. It's online. You guys can find it, where we go through the 11 different types of thinking, and we talk about the value of each one and how to incorporate them. I was Mr. Optimist. Everything was going to work out. Yeah, it worked out until I went off a cliff because I wasn't being realistic. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things. Realistic thinking is an important part and component of optimistic and pessimistic thinking. We've
Yeah.
got to have, it's kind of like if you look at a deal, if you're going to go invest in, say, a piece of real estate or a business, there's a sensitivity study that you do where you look at the most likely scenario, the best case scenario, and the worst case scenario. And what we tend to have is a cognitive bias. We have a bias towards normalcy from the past. So whatever we've experienced, we go, oh, that's the most likely thing. And what we don't see is something that's on the edge. We don't understand the possibilities. Like when I had things that ultimately collapsed, I said, well, worst case scenario is I only make 5% instead of losing $2 million on the thing.
Yeah.
So this is where baldness and grayness and wisdom really comes into play, where you start to appreciate the edge cases, and you ask yourself, what black swan might come and sit on my head? And then you go, okay, that's probably a likelihood in the next 10 years. A black swan will come and kick my ass.
Yeah.
So let's just make sure that I'm not all in one space where I can have this thing kill me.
Yeah. That's so. Whenever I discovered that, because I think it was about maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, I kept seeing more and more stuff about prepare for the recession, prepare for the market crash, be in position, and risk factor, and so I started understanding it more. And I guess when this thing happened, I was kind of prepared mentally for it. And so I kind of was like excited because I was like, what's gonna happen, you know. But I can guarantee you, if I was still thinking the way I was 2 or 3 years ago, very optimistic, all in, let's just buy it. We'll figure out we'll figure out how, let's buy it, and we'll figure out how we're gonna get the money later kind of attitude. I would probably be in a bad situation right now.
This is the problem with not having a team, with not going out beyond your legacy circles, people you've been around, or just doing the same thing over and over again. You end up in a bubble, and so it's important to be around people that are going to stretch you to ask other questions. I mean, one of the things that's really valuable to know is that you have the answers inside you. If you can get somebody to help you ask the right questions, because I
Yeah,
don't think we're inherently stupid. I think there's a lot that we have inside of us. We just haven't had it tapped.
yeah,
And having somebody ask you questions like, okay, what could happen here? What could, like, if something happened, what would that do to your business? And then really push you on the different edge cases. And it's just asking better questions. We just tend to we're just really bad at asking questions. We're great at asking for answers, but what we don't do is ask people to help us with questions, and that changes everything.
yeah. That's so true. Our someone will bring like a concern up or something, and we kind of ignore it as them being negative.
That's exactly right. It's 100% right.
Oh man. I was gonna ask something else, but I don't know if you have to go or you have to take off or what. What's your schedule like?
Yeah, I think I think it's one of those beautiful nights. One of the things that I've really come to appreciate is being outdoors and enjoying the sunrise and the sunsets, and it's it's simple things. I think we've been chasing stimulation that's misplaced on
Yeah,
the things that we think we need, and instead I'm enjoying the simple things. So one of the simple things is having rhythms around nature, and so I appreciate that. I appreciate just watching how the sun dances across the mountains, and how a quail is going to chase a rabbit outside my place, like simple stuff like that. So that's part
nature.
of my ritual. Like I'm watching the sun off to the side here, and I'm like, it's part of my day. It's part of what I love being, why I love being where I live. And so, yeah, it's pretty
That's
cool.
so true. I think that like just being outside really open. It kind of like refreshes you and it kind of brings you back, kind of grounds you out. Hey, just real quick, what is your diet morning routine like?
A diet morning routine are really a lot of connecting with my food. So what that means is I don't think it matters all that much what we consume. Um, into it, the most important thing for me is to understand what the heck I'm eating. So I do not have Cocoa Puffs anymore. I have things that are from a ground where I could actually say, okay, this is asparagus, this is zucchini, this is quinoa, and I tend to cook more. And I have as much as I can that's live. Very, very, very little animal products, and it's because I feel better. So I mean, I'm conscious. It doesn't really matter what you eat if you are conscious enough about how it impacts you. And I've watched people, and I just shook my head, and I watched when this one couple, and I watched them, and they were both very, very obese, and I watched how they would eat, and I watched one time how they had one of them had a piece of cheesecake for dinner, and I thought, how is it that you're so stupid that you think that that's not going to matter?
Yeah.
And so, just watching, being conscious to it, like I have a rhythm around making sure that I have supplements that are for things that help my immune system
Yeah.
and give me some of these vitamins I'm missing. But the truth is, if you have a very strong plant-based diet, you're going to get most of the things you need. And
Yeah.
it's, I mean, that's really all it is. It's keeping as close to the dirt as possible.
Yeah. Are you doing any of the plant-based meats? Yeah. Beyond Meat?
So yeah, so I've had some of them, and some of them are pretty good. The danger in any of this stuff is that the more processed things are, the more frankenfood it is. And
Okay.
so even though, yeah, that they're sustainable, and Beyond Beef or whatever, these different Beyond Burgers and all that stuff, impossible. Well, it's impossible to think that this is actually going to be healthy long term. Give you a funny story. There years ago when Olestra came out, it was the fat, the oil that didn't stick. It didn't stick because it went right through you. And I remember having a bag of chips, and the next day I had to crap like 6 times in about an hour on the way to court to evict somebody. And I almost missed my court appearance because I had to stop like every 200 feet and get out of the car and race into a bathroom. That's frankenfood. No, it doesn't matter whether it's coconut oil or avocados or anything else. Real foods don't do that to us. Our bodies are not meant to be chemical, chemical eaters. Like, we're meant to have real food. And so I just think it's important that we stay as close to the dirt, not the version of plant-based that is processed,
Yeah.
but farmers market type of stuff. Anybody can do that. I mean, I don't care where you live. You've got options, and it might take more effort for some people. But the truth is, you're going to pay for it one way or another. You're going to pay for it with your time and money up front, or you're going to pay for it with your sickness down the road.
That's so true. That's so true. Hey, Damon, it was a pleasure talking to you. We definitely got to follow up maybe down the road and see how everything gets back on track. But I'll let you enjoy your walk and enjoy the sunset. And let's stay in touch, man.
All right, sounds good. I appreciate you having me, and it's great connecting with you, man. We'll see you real soon.
Bye bye.
All right, take care. Bye bye.